It is still cold and snowy out here in the Midwest, so let's encourage a little bit of warm weather with a still life. If I can get this flower in here. Whatever. Nope, nope, no, no, nope, nope. Well, actually, I think this is how I'm going to make the flowers. So let's get started. The first thing I did is measured out a 4-inch square on this parchment paper, and that just helps me to keep things in the right dimension. Now the first petal of each of these flowers is the critical one. Once you get that one right, the rest of them kind of fall in line. So spend your time to kind of bend it into shape. Once you get started, it's really, really difficult to kind of undo what you've done. So just make sure you get that first one right. Once you get about 4 petals done, wrap the wire around in the center and that will hold everything in place. And then just keep making more petals until you're satisfied with the number of petals you've made. Again, as you go, just keep wrapping around the center of the flower. Not only will that help make the center of the flower, but it will also help pin everything together. All right, and then once you're done, just wrap it a few times until you're satisfied with the size of that center part. Then you're going to make that leaf, and the leaf is just one more loop, but it's going to be the same size, a little bit larger than the petals, and then you just wrap the wire down. And then just shape that leaf. And then once you're happy with it and it doesn't go scooting off the table, you clip it to size and set it aside. Now we're going to make a film that will be kind of the glass, if you will, that you're going to paint on. This will just be some Mod Podge, about 1/16 of an inch thick, and then you let it dry. I discovered that I made that first one too small, so I went and found a bigger container and just used those to make larger sheets. The reason I'm using Mod Podge and not something like epoxy resin or something like that is because it stays flexible, and you're going to need that flexibility. It also allows you to add more Mod Podge on there to glue it to the metal. But once you add the Mod Podge, it will kind of reactivate the sheet, and then it will also make it flexible so you can kind of press it into place. I'm using a sheet of parchment paper to make sure it doesn't stick to the table or stick to anything else. You'll see later I forgot that step and it stuck to the actual Mod Podge and it was a big mess. Once the Mod Podge is set up, you'll know because it's clear again, and that's when you can go ahead and trim it with a pair of scissors or an X-Acto knife. All right, so I just made 4 of these flowers, 2 with the loops, 2 without. When you're painting, you're going to paint on the Mod Podge side. So you're essentially painting on the back of each of the flowers. For solid colors, you can just paint on as regular. I do a nice thick coat because when this paint dries, it's going to add some structure to the whole piece. So give it some thickness and don't be shy with the paint. The Mod Podge will be kind of reactivated. You'll see it's going to turn white. But don't worry about that. Once the paint dries, you're all set, and it will actually be clear again. For these marble colors, these kind of swirls of colors that I'm putting on, you're actually just going to be placing the color on there. So you're just kind of roll it off the brush or just kind of plop it on the back, and then don't try and brush it on. As much as you can get away with it, just, like I said, roll it on or just kind of drop it onto the back of these leaves. The colors you see here are just a purple and white, blue and white, and then a red and white swirl. And then that yellow is just a kind of a dark and light yellow color that I had mixed together. And I'll put all of these colors in the description. For the background, I'm using a 1/4-inch plywood board. Once I had the board sealed with gesso, it was time to figure out what kind of vase I wanted. Once I decided on a style of vase I liked, I sketched it out, but then I made it a full-size kind of paper prototype. I then twisted a couple of strands of the copper wire together using my drill, and now it's just time to bend it all into shape, following that exact pattern. At this point, though, I actually had no idea how I was going to connect all of these pieces, so I put it aside so I could concentrate on the background. The background is just going to be a simple, traditional, still life background, so a wall and a table. But I'm putting a ton of texture in here, so it took a lot of time. My technique for this is just kind of overloading that brush and then rolling the paint on and dabbing it on so that it kind of smears but leaves a track of nice thick paint. Now for the table, I started off with this red thinking I had made it as dark as I really wanted it, but once I started looking at it, it really was not dark enough. But I pressed on. I have no idea why. I just continued on and painted that whole table. What this did for me, though, is it allowed me to put a background in place that had the right angle. So all the texture was in the right angle. And then I came back with lighter brown, which still wasn't right. I thought I was going to be able to mix this in place and get the right color. It still didn't work out. But I pressed on again and just mixed it in, just to make sure everything was even all across this scene. And then I came back in with a darker brown, and that actually ended up working out much better. I'm really happy with the final result. So with this darker brown, I'm mixing it in place, really overloading the brush as I apply it, and then just kind of pressing it and then forming the pattern that I want. For the upper corner of the vase, just to close the shape, I'm folding each wire one up, one down, and just kind of folding them over each other. So for the vertical pieces, that kind of those center pieces, I'm just wrapping the ends so that one loops up and one loops down, and then that held really nice and firm. And then for the fill, I'm actually just doing the same technique I did for the flowers, making a sheet of the Mod Podge, and then a little ASMR for you as I peel it off. And then just spreading Mod Podge on one surface of that and pressing it into place and kind of stretching it. And again, as the Mod Podge gets kind of soaked with that new Mod Podge layer that you're using to glue it into place, it actually kind of gets stretchy, so you can smooth it out, and it just takes some time. This is the point, though, that I forgot to use the parchment paper under it, and I was using regular paper, and the stuff dries fast enough that it actually lifted that paper and created a rough surface. Later on, it turned out to be kind of a happy accident because I was able to let this fully dry, and then once it was, I came back in and painted a nice thick coat of the Mod Podge back on the front side, and that smoothed everything out and helped kind of glue everything into place a little bit more. So it all worked out in the end. For the paint, I'm just loosely mixing the color and then just pressing it into place. But you can, in this case, paint it on a little bit. You're going to need to anyway. It does smear it and kind of mix it a little bit more than I'd like, but it worked out. And then to attach it to the board, I'm marking out the 4 corners. And then drilling out some holes. And that will be used for some copper wire loops. And then those little sticks that I cut out were used to wrap the copper wire around the back and hold everything in place. And then finally doing a little flower arranging, and for this I used contact cement. It held really nicely, and I'll show you the final piece in a second. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video because I had so much fun making this piece. It mostly came out the way I had pictured in my head, which is a relatively rare event. So I'm happy about that. And it's gotten a good reception from the people I've shown it to already, so I'm happy about that as well. But I hope it inspires you to go out there and make some art of your own, try a new technique or two, try some new materials, see what happens. Anyway, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Let me know if you'd like to see something in a future video, and I'll try and make that happen. But without further ado, here's the painting.